Hi, everybody. This is Austin, the Fantasy Baseball on Deck, and really appreciate everyone's super kind words and support that they always. Yeah, you guys are awesome. The people that follow this account are like the nicest people on the planet. They really keep me going, and I love you all individually. Anyways, moving on to what is the purpose of this video. I've gotten a lot of messages and thanks from people essentially all across the world saying that they appreciate the cheat sheet. They appreciate the like the couple tools that I provide you in the way of videos that are like how I evaluate batters, how I evaluate pitchers, and they also the mock drafts, so sort of like show you like how I go about building a team. Well, with those, though people have said that it's helpful, the next questions or a next set of like several questions that I've gotten is like, hey man, really appreciate you putting these together, but like this is my first year ever playing fantasy baseball and I don't know what I'm doing. Or I've never played fantasy baseball before. I auto drafted. I don't know which way is up kind of thing. Can you please help me out? And so it's a video, not necessarily going into the depth of like how you evaluate players and such like most of my other videos. It's less of a strategy from a tactical perspective and more of like a foundational. Here's how you build your roster. Here's how you evaluate players from a super high level, like how you find them, how you uncover, people at the right times before the rest of the crowd latches on and whatever. So I think it'll just make more sense if I jump into it. And I have my spectacles here. This is my homepage, Fantasy Baseball on Deck with Astro and such. So if you scroll down to the fantasy or 2024 Fantasy Baseball preseason playlist, this first video with Bobby Witt Jr. and Spencer Strider, that this is describing my how to use my cheat sheet, which is this and this link to this cheat sheet. There's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that haven't drafted, I guess, yet that are still using the cheat sheet, which is cool. So there's a list of everybody in here. Green, again, I'm not going to talk about like the cheat sheet. I've done that enough. And then the batter evaluation tabs and the pitcher evaluation tabs and whatever. So there's a video that it describes how to use that tool specifically. There's a link both at the top of my page here to that tool. And then also that same link is included within all of the comment sections of my preseason video. So every preseason video has that cheat sheet link into it. And then also if you want to learn how I evaluate hitters and pitchers, there's about 44 minutes, 35 minutes worth of content there to sort of explain how I separate players based on individual production. So anyways, and the rest are just mock drafts. And I think that you've probably watched those before, or, if you haven't, who cares? We're moving on. Anyways, so that's the tool. Everybody, I appreciate everyone's positive, kind words. I put a ton of time, as you can imagine, evaluating every player essentially in the top 400 and giving you a pretty decent, reasoning for why I think the way that I think. And we're on to the actually doing things. So if you get to your player, like your team roster, so you're going to go to my team within ESPN, and this is for ESPN head-to-head leagues, but really like from a foundational standpoint, like this is going to be like, this is going to be also credible for people that play in categories leagues and whatever moving forward too. So this is my team. If you look down, I've got a whole set roster of hitters and a set roster of pitchers with someone on the IL. I have an extra batter spot because we just drafted this roster last night, and I'm just using it as an example. I'm not talking about the players, just how do I build a roster. So if you have your roster, if you've already drafted, this is the video for you if you don't know what you're doing. So what's important before you even look at what your roster is, it's important to figure out your league settings. And a couple things that you want to look at that are most important, and to me, most importantly, figure out are there any outliers when it comes to scoring? So from a batter perspective, if you see anything differing that's this one goes this league specifically focuses on total bases. So per total base, you get 1 point. If you were playing in a league that gave you points instead for home runs, triples, doubles, singles, whatever, then it would be most likely 4 points for a home run, 3 points for a triple, 2 points for a double, and so on, right? So In this league, everything is standard. Nothing's weird from a batting perspective, except the only bonus and like kind of the outlier that's different from ESPN standard leagues is that strikeouts are only half of a minus 0.5 points compared to minus 1 point per strikeout. So that's pretty significant from an offensive perspective. And then if we look at the pitching side of things, there's 1 point per put out. So innings pitched, 3 points. So 3 outs per inning. That's what that means. Hits allowed -1, earned runs -2. These are all like standards. Strikeouts only worth 1 point. That's standard. So that there's no bonus there. And then wins and losses are worth the same, -5 compared to 5 points. And then saves are actually 5 points instead, I think, of 8 points. So relievers are less important in this league, but everything is standard for the most part. The only thing that I think we can kind of take a competitive advantage of is the hitting side of things. So anyways, if you go back to and then the next thing I wanted to mention is knowing how many games you're allowed to start per week. So per week, I'm allowed to have 12 games started for pitchers. And what that means, if I go over to my roster and look at my pitchers, I need to actually like add 2 relief pitchers per se. But if this was a regular week from Monday through Sunday, or actually Monday through Saturday, because we have 12 pitchers per week allowed, you are only allowed to have for Monday through Saturday 11 pitchers go, or else it'll cut off all of your starting pitchers. So let's say that you have a starting pitcher heavy roster, kind of like I do. I'm looking to trade people so like I can kind of backfill with closers that are available. But overall, I'm only allowed to start 12 pitchers per week. So Monday through Saturday, it's really important to like kind of follow along with me here. If I have 11 pitchers that go by Saturday, on Sunday, the very last day, when I hit that number 12, I can have as many. So like as many as I want, just how it figures out and how it falls. So if I make sure that I'm 11 or under going into Saturday, and I had, just for example, Freddie Peralta and Justin Steele and Joe Musgrove, all 3 of them pitching again on Sunday, they were double start. Then even though I'm going over that 12 on that last day, I went into Sunday with only 11. So therefore 12, 13, and 14, all of those pitchers count. But if I was to say I had 10 pitchers by the end of Friday, and I had Shane Bieber and Bailey Ober, these 2 starting pitchers, going on Saturday, it would be advantageous of me to purposely bench one of these players so that I only had 11 coming into Sunday, and then I was able to maximize. So that's the first lesson. And if that didn't make sense, leave a comment, ask a friend. That's like one of the biggest tools and things to sort of keep aware of. And if you aren't sure, like, what your number is, whatever, if you're on the mobile app, you'll actually like click the Fancy Cast scoring tab, and you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it'll show you how many pitchers out of your limit for that week that you've used so far. If you're on a desktop, which is, I do everything on a desktop for the most part because the information is more vast. It's easier to do math, and I've got 2 screens, and it's just a better time overall. So if I go to my scoreboard, so desktop wise, full scoreboard, or sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Gosh darn it, not schedule. Sorry, everybody on YouTube, my lovely crowd of people that hype me up all the time for me to just make mistakes and stuff. So anyways, so you got to click on your box score for the current week. And I think it's really dumb. ESPN is, if you haven't drafted yet, you're going to be gifted those points that happened in Korea versus the Dodgers and the Padres for those 2 games. You're going to be gifted their stats. So because Joe Musgrove incurred negative however many points, I'm starting out behind, which is not ideal, but I fear nothing. It'll still be okay. Anyways, to figure out how many games that you've started on the desktop aspect, you're going to go to the scoreboard. So again, my team, and I wish my computer was faster, and then you're going to go to current matchup scoreboard, and that's going to get you to your 2 teams. You're going to look under your team name, and it's going to say game limits, however many started. and my number is 1 out of 10. So I've used one of my 10 starting pitchers for this first matchup in like this current fantasy matchup. So I have until, I think it's super short. It's a weird week. So just till like March 31st to make sure that I'm under 10, or at least like I'm under 10 on March 30th, so I can max out on March 31st. Anyways, on to the next concepts. I think we're making fairly good already 10 minutes. I never get used to how much time it takes to explain things with this. But anyways, if you see a notification, it'll look the same on your mobile device compared to your desktop. This means that you either have a claim waiting or you have a trade waiting. And I'm currently trying to trade for Spencer Strider, as I already have in my other league. So that's just basically showing you like a notification, like you have any notification that's currently pending. So I have a trade sent. So that means if you ever see a red number 1 or a red any sort of number, that means that you either have a claim pending or a trade pending. And, that's something relevant to keep track of. What's the next part? Roster manipulation, super important. So in ESPN, at least with this league, I have a second base, third base slot and a first base, third base slot. I have 5 outfielders, 1 utility slot. Regardless of how many position players you have, you want to max out this to its own, like its parameters only. Do not use any bench spots for batters. Use up all of your bench spots for pitchers. And I'll kind of explain that a little more, like I think in a couple seconds when I start to talk about catchers. But overall, you want 3 relief pitchers. Right now, I only have 1 relief pitcher because, again, I'm trying to trade some of these more valuable starting pitchers for things back so I can add scrap pile relief pitchers. And that's kind of just usually how I go about things. But you want to use, again, all of your bench spots. So I'm given 3 bench spots. Claims haven't processed yet in my league. So whenever the claims process, because I drafted Yuri Perez and he went to the IL, I get 1 more ad, but I'll add actually 2 more people before adding the actual active player. And that's my note to say, make sure you fill up your IL slot. So right now I have Yuri Perez on my IL slot, and he's going to miss an unknown amount of time, fairly short period for the Marlins, but I have a lot of faith in him. If there's a player like Max Scherzer or Jacob deGrom or Robbie Ray that's available that's supposed to come back mid-season, then this is when you would do that. So you would go to your add players essentially, and I'm kind of getting out of order here, but you would basically add those players first. So if I went to add, say if like Yuri Perez, I didn't have him on my roster, I would go to add him to my roster. He would slot into an active slot. I would then move him to my IL by using the manage IL slot, and I would basically move him from the IL or the active roster to the IL. Doing that reopens the spot. So essentially maxing out your IL slots and adding the IL players first allows you to use all of your slots and max out your roster. So that's really important. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And basically like add, again, those couple of names that I just said, I would add because they're future assets to either use or trade whenever they become relevant. And obviously, like if your active players that you're using get hurt, then you just drop those IL people and slot in and out and whatever. I think everyone maybe gets the point of that. But also keep track. There's an acquisition limit, and I kind of forgot about that in this other league. And I shouldn't forget about anything because I'm obsessed with this stuff. But like I only get 3 acquisition limits or acquisitions in this other league. I didn't draft Max Scherzer or Robbie Ray. Those were my first 2 ads, and then I added Jackson Merrill from the Padres, and then I'm like, I can't add anymore. So I'm actually going to be a man down to start off the fantasy season in this other league, but that's okay. So also check to see if you have any acquisition limits for your league per week. So going over the roster, if this is going to be the first view that you see, so let's go to, I guess we're going to go on to catchers, like how you want to, like, you're always going to be given the 2024 season, like current stats when you open up your league because the first games have already started, but this is not helpful to you right now because nothing's happened yet. So if you want to like filter in between. The filters are over to the side here, and on the mobile app, it's like pretty easy. You just click on filter. What's going to be most important is you're going to either look at the 2024 projections or you're going to look at the 2023 stats to sort of like evaluate like your roster and figure out like what people are worth. At this point, I wouldn't focus on that. I'm actually going to talk about trades later in the video. So I'm going to try to stay fairly structured here and just move on. In this league specifically, I'm going to talk. So now moving on to catchers. And I guess before I even say catchers, make sure, again, none of your bench spots are used on bats, okay? None of these bench spots are used on bats because when everyone's playing, every team in the league is playing, that means that one guy is just forced to sit on your bat, wasting points. The days that, like, you're able to maybe slot him in are not worth the giving up the opportunity for a pitcher to pitch every 5 days or a relief pitcher to potentially play every day. Make sure that your relief pitchers are never on your bench. Make sure that your relief pitchers are loaded into your active roster every day, no matter what, to make sure that, again, if they come in for a save and they're on your bench just because you kind of forgot, like, those are lost points, right? Now we're going to go on to catchers. Catchers, I have Logan O'Hoppe. Logan O'Hoppe is reported to hopefully catch at least 110 of 162 games this year. And hopefully on some of those off days, he's one of their better hitters. We hope that he's able to earn some DH slots. But even given that, if I start talking about catchers, the top 3 catchers in the league, Adley Rutschman, super young player. It's in Baltimore, is one of Baltimore's best players. Adley Rutschman actually caught and or like played and appeared in 150 plus games last year. For a catcher, that is the max. You're never going to get more than 150 games. William Contreras, second best catcher in the league, was the. I guess I could just show this. William Contreras, second best catcher in the league. He only appeared in 140 plus games. Third place, Will Smith, only appeared in 126 games out of 162. So you can start to imagine, like, okay, so those first 3 guys are worth something, and they're like pretty high up in the draft. So I end up not drafting a catcher, because if you start to look at like what was available in comparison for an opportunity to be a full-time player, you look at the pitchers, you run into someone like okay, so guys, I'm so freaking sorry. So if we scroll down and check out, so Elias Diaz was an all-star catcher for the Rockies, and he scored 303 points this past season. Okay, well, let's say that you had Elias Diaz. He's just the first guy on waivers, essentially, that I could pick up if I wanted him, but I don't want a catcher, because if I go to pitchers, then players like last year that were like free agency pickups. If I look at a guy like Kyle Bradish was a free agency pickup, he scored 417 points. So 114 more points than a catcher, and he just sat on my, like, he didn't waste any space. He didn't miss any games, just every 5 days. And he actually went down to the minors for a little bit too and still scored 114 more points. That's a good, like, a solid example. Another solid example would be like Mitch Keller, was not owned by or drafted by many people. So like if you saw his first couple starts with the Pirates when they started out pretty hot, he scored again a whole 86 more points than the catcher. So this is like, these are examples of like, this gives, not owning a catcher gives you more flexibility to pick up on those pitchers that can really make a difference throughout the year. And it's just the opportunity for, I was going to say revenue because I teach business, the opportunity for earning fantasy revenue, which is points, is just much higher if you have pitchers that you can move around. Just don't own a catcher, in my personal opinion, unless you have a league that locks per week, meaning like kind of like fantasy football. If you that first game of the week that you play, if your players lock in, then like you have to have a catcher, because then you would just be losing points because there's not that everyday opportunity to flex people and move them around. So we talked about catchers. We talked about free agency pitchers. We talked about the filters. and kind of like what those mean. One really easy thing that I didn't talk about is like, so fantasy football, there's only 16 games per year, now 17 games per year. With fantasy baseball, there's 162 games per season. It's a long season. It's a lot of work. There's no way to get around it. Fantasy baseball, it takes up a lot of time. You have to focus on what you have to focus on. But what people don't talk about is really like how convenient it is to set up your future roster. So this tab up here that shows the dates, and actually like you can set your lineups in the future per day. And so if you set your lineup on Thursday, the lineup on Friday like doesn't necessarily change. It's like an empty fixed slate depending on each day, right? So if I scroll down, I see, oh shoot, like Freddie Peralta is already postponed. I have all of my probable pitchers. So this PP, these blue PPs basically explain, I'd say like for opening day tomorrow, Justin Steele, Shane Bieber, and Garrett Crochet are going to pitch for their respective teams. Freddie Peralta was going to be the opening day pitcher, but because they're postponed, there's the red exclamation mark there, and know that like he's not going to have an opportunity to play. So you could tell, like, Cutter Crawford's not going to come out of the bullpen. But like that would be an opportunity that, okay, the game's postponed. You can confidently move him to one of these slots down here for a pitcher that possibly has an opportunity to play because the game's not going to happen, right? And then, so if I go to Friday, then you start to have some pockets of like not every team in baseball is playing. And at that point, you go and fill in like all of your active people. So I know that, again, Freddie Peralta is going to instead play the next day, Joe Musgrove, Christian Javier, and so forth. So just like setting up your P's throughout the week, it is pretty easy. It's not a tough thing. So anyways, that's how you set your probable pitchers. Always just keep a full roster from a batting perspective and whatever. So I'll move on to evaluating players on the waiver. So anyways, I guess I'm sorry I thought that I was more organized than I necessarily am, I guess, to see. But let's just okay, so I'm going to filter. So all available players and batters. So if you click the players option, you're thinking to yourself, like, I just had someone get hurt. I need to go add a player at X position. This is what you're going to see. The available batters on your basically in your league, right? What it's going to show you originally is the 2024 season. Nothing's happened yet, so it's not super helpful. Again, either go to 2024 projections or use the 2023 season to sort of like evaluate what's going on. Early in the season, it's easier, I think, to use 2024 projections only because it sort of sifts out the people that are hurt, even though you see TJ Friedel and Nathan Lowe up here. If I hit the totals, that'll like essentially like sift out all of the hurt people from last season, bring up the healthy people of this season, so that like you can sort of again figure out like before we've acquired any points, like who's most likely going to score the most points according to ESPN. ESPN's trash, but that's why we play ESPN, because they don't give you the best information. They don't know how to like forecast for stuff. Anyways, mid-season. So let's say like a month goes by and you have someone get hurt and you're looking to add another player. That's when you like go away from the 2024 season stats and instead would like either click on the last 30 days, the last 15 days, or the last 7 days. And what that does is really like that kind of speaks into the roster manipulation aspect. So roster manipulation. So like players that like before arbitration, if you don't know what arbitration is, essentially each each MLB player, it's really like interesting in baseball, depending on their service time, they essentially go to, or when they say like a player avoids arbitration, they avoid going into a courtroom and having a third party arbitrator evaluate the player and based on like what they're worth, sort of thing. In arbitration, if it gets to that, a player comes to the court and says, I deserve, because of my playing stats, my production, my individual production, I deserve this amount of money, and it's here, right? The ownership is going to come in with a set number, and the number is going to be here. And at that point, it is up to the arbitrator to either pick which one is more relevant, or decide a number somewhere in the middle. And a lot of times they end up going into the middle. But like, why I bring that up is that if you don't play one of your best minor league players for the first month, you gain an entire extra year of control onto them, moving forward. So like, if you can remember, like when the Chicago Cubs, before they won the World Series, they were bringing up Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant was the number one prospect in baseball, best player on the roster, but they purposely said like, he needs a month in the minors to develop, right? Like, but he doesn't need a month in the minors. They're just trying to control him longer, right? So for that first month, like, he's not going to play. So a player like that's not going to get like an opportunity to open like the season with the team. They're going to come in later. So it's not advantageous of you to use the 2024 season stats that I'm now pointing at. It's not advantageous to use the 2024 season stats a lot of times when you're trying to find players that are kind of emerging, because they haven't had an opportunity to get any sort of volume. They're not even going to like show up on this. So what you want to do is you want to use last 7 days, last 15 days, or last 30 days to sort of like better pick up on trends, as well as if you have a player that just got added to the player pool, essentially, they just like are making their debut, then it's easy to go to this research column and click plus minus, and it's going to show you the most added player per like batters, per pitchers, whatever. It's going to show you like across all ESPN leagues who is the most added person over like, I think like the last 7 days, essentially. And that's going to like, again, that's a good way to uncover valuable people. So like Jackson Merrill is like the fifth, like one of 5 players ever to start the season in center field at 20 years or younger, right? And he went to Korea, had a good opening series. So, he's been picked up by plus 9% essentially of people across all leagues. So that's like mid-season kind of how you determine like who is worth like adding when you need to claim someone. Claiming and adding a player is very different. Right now, you see this yellow sign. So for whatever reason, if I wanted to add Jackson Merrill right now, if I hit this claim button is going to tell me that and if I was going to drop Josh Young, which I don't want to do, I hope that this doesn't F me. It's going to tell you this. Claiming and dropping means we're claiming and adding are 2 different things. So if I put in a claim for Jackson Merrill and Josh Young, I'd be so pissed if this actually went through. But just for the purpose of YouTube, I'm going to see a 2 here, pending moves. And it's telling me that on the morning of March 28th, so tomorrow, this claim would process, meaning I would add Jackson Merrill onto my team. I would drop Josh Jung, and there's a time limit, right? But I'm going to cancel that just so I don't forget about it, because that would make me very upset. Why you don't want to claim people right away? Let everyone put their claims in to start the season, because everyone had an opportunity to build their like teams the way they wanted to. All the free agency people left. You have an opportunity to like look across them and say to yourself like, oh shit, didn't know that, Justin Verlander didn't get drafted. Oh, I really want him, whatever. Don't use your claims, because this is the value of claims. So the yellow circle, don't click yellow circles in the very beginning of the year, because what'll happen is when this processes next morning, because I'm not using any of my claims and I drafted in the 5th slot, that puts me in the 6th slot for waiver order. So similarly, like Dennis at the very bottom here, because he was the first overall draft pick in our draft, he is 10th overall in claim status because he was the first draft pick. So let's just say that 3 people in front of me add, like, they add people. Well, I'm going to move up to number 3. Burp. That should be some sort of fine. I'm sorry. If 3 people ahead of me put claims in for players that already exist in the player pool, that means I move up to number 3. And when I move up to number 3, that gives me an opportunity to have a better opportunity to add players to my roster that I actually value and that I think are important, right? So it like last season as an example, if I'm going to go to like the free agents, somebody in my other league, let's just say that these were all the batters available. Oh, geez. I'm sorry, everybody. Gosh. Okay. These were all the batters available in the first month. Gunnar Henderson last season had a really slow start. Gunnar Henderson is not somebody that should be drafted, but it was his first year as a full-time player with the Orioles. Somebody drafted him. Gunnar Henderson is here. Let's say, as an example, every other player is green, but Gunnar Henderson's yellow. I put my claim in, and because only one person ahead of me essentially had a higher claim than me, all I needed to happen was them not put a claim in on it, and it was my player. So the value of making sure that your claims are high is that when I go like the waiver order that just happened in my other league, I didn't put my claim in. I'm already up to number 2. So if a player like Gunnar Henderson gets dropped like they did last year, the only person that could beat me in this other league would be this Kyle, my friend Kyle, essentially. So if Kyle didn't put his claim in, I'd have that player. So it just increases your chances of grabbing valuable things that people drop too early because they lose faith in them and whatever. So that's the difference between adding and claiming. If you add a player, if it's a green circle, like, sorry, if it's a green circle, like you see here, there's no, I can't show you that example because I can't add that player. I'm not going to add that player because it's instantaneous. If I add that player right now, if I added on Francisco Alvarez and dropped my catcher, Francisco Alvarez will be on my roster. My catcher would leave the roster immediately, whereas the claim like processes because it's gathering everyone's claims. Again, that's the difference between claims and ads. And again, I'm sorry for being a little bulky with my words here. But again, these are for the people that have never played before. Hopefully this is helpful. I said before, evaluating players throughout the season. It's best to use the last 7 days, last 15 days, last 30 days, and then also the research plus minus tab to sort of like, again, catch on to the players that are being manipulated with their service time by ownership. And then also like players that come back from injury that are like not super known about that like, are succeeding and whatever. So that's how I evaluate and kind of uncover players that are worth investing into. But now I'm going to talk about trading. I said I would earlier. So if I am going to trade, that's when I go to, and we'll just say go to 2024 projections. Let's just say that we have we're in the middle of the year. We have plenty of stats to focus on. I'm going to go over to fantasy points and hit total, and I'm going to filter by that. And I wish I could include my own players. We'll go to all. And let's just say that I wanted to trade for, I really wanted to trade for Shohei Ohtani. Well, I would look at the total overall points for that season, and I would grab 2 of my players that are slightly less productive that could possibly go for that player, and that's how I package trades. So Shohei Ohtani, it shows that he's projected to score 544 points or 545 points in this league. I would package, just for example, like a Pete Alonso or a Julio Rodriguez, maybe another like a pitcher or something to go after those players. So literally, like in the example that I have, like my trade that I just completed in my other league. Spencer Strider was the first pitcher taken off the board. I missed by 1 pick. So I packaged Marcus Semien, Justin Steele, and Joe Musgrove, 3 players, 3 top 100 players for the pitcher that I'm extremely interested in. So in this league, the scoring is wonky, so don't necessarily focus on that too much. But 1,379 pitch points versus 1,329 versus 1,211 for one player that's worth 17,000 points and 1,700 points. And the kind of why I do this is that people, when they're looking at trades, they will say to themselves, okay, I'm going to give up a higher quality player for 2 players that are like just kind of over in value. So because it's like, okay, well, I'm getting 2 players. Okay, guys, I'm sorry again. He gave away a player that's essentially going to score 1786 for 3 players that are going to score around 1,300 points, right? And the point in their head is like, okay, well, I just gained like 3 volume, fairly like quality players for like one guy that was really, really good. My team just got deeper, just got better. In my head, I'm always willing to trade 2 pieces that are not as valuable as this one piece, because that means I'm trading away 2, I'm bringing back 1, but we're always able to find super valuable things in the free agent pile, unlike fantasy football. Like, it's just not the same math. There's so many more positions that are relatable. And also, you just have to always remember that there's an entire minor league system that is super valuable in fantasy baseball that's unique to fantasy baseball. There's no minor league system in fantasy football. The amount of every player is significant. It's like, unless you're a bullpen, like a mid-relief bullpen guy, you're significant, right? So what I'm saying is, when it comes to trading, always trade 2 for 1, 3 for 1, get that 1 player back. You're going to add 2 more players that were significant, like pretty close in value, that we can find off the free agent pile, compared to like, what you just sent away. So anyways, that wraps it up. If I missed something, if you have questions, please leave them. This was sort of to like try my best to answer the questions that were left for me in the first place. So hopefully this made sense and wasn't super confusing, but I welcome you to the fantasy baseball world. This is my favorite, my favorite hobby. The people I interact with that also like fantasy baseball, this is a safe place for all of us nerds to, get weird about the sport that we really, really like. So anyways, again, I'm Austin. This is Fantasy Baseball on Deck. Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball on Deck family, and best of luck. Again, leave questions in the comments. I try to answer every single one of them, and best of luck to you. See ya. Bye.